If you've ever felt confused about how to do cardio the right way, or wondered if steady state cardio is good, or if high intensity is better, or if like a weighted vest is actually helping you, then this episode is going to clear it all up for you. I'm going to break down 4 buckets of cardio training, how to balance the intensity that you do of them throughout the week, and give you a simple weekly cardio template that you can start using right away, no matter your current skill level. All right, you guys, I am excited about this cardio episode. I oftentimes get prompted about the different episodes that I record based off of questions that I get from current clients, past clients, prospective clients. And so know that this episode is coming from one of my current clients, one of my virtual clients. Actually, if you have any questions that you want covered on a podcast episode, feel free to DM me at carrier_bestyou. If you're one of my clients, feel free to text me, feel free to call me, feel free to mention it in class. I would love to dive deeper into any specific topics that you guys want to get more information on and dive in more depth into. And so let me know. But today is going to be about cardio. Today is going to be specifically about like segmenting out the different types of cardiovascular activity that there are, the benefits of each, the actual goals of each, and like what your goals are, what you should be doing. Because I actually had a question. The question that's prompted this podcast was my client had asked me whether or not going outside and doing a walk with a weighted vest was good cardio, was generally kind of the question that he asked. And we'll dive into that specific topic here in a second. Before I dive into all this information, I want to invite you to join the Best You Retreat January 8th through 11th. Again, if you're the type of person who wants to be more intentional in the different areas of your life, if you're the type of person who feels like you have so many plates that you're trying to juggle and you can't keep them organized and you keep letting plates fall and drop, there is a way out of that. There is a way to actually feel organized and feel in control of all the different things that you have going on. It's not easy, but it's possible. It takes intentionality on an annual basis, a quarterly basis, and a weekly basis, and that can be achieved if you know the right system. And I would love to teach you that system at the Best You Retreat. So join us by going to nickcarrier.com/bestyourretreat from January 8th through 11th in 2026. It's an hour west of Nashville. It's going to be the best thing possible to kick you off with more clarity and motivation at the beginning of the year than ever before. Go to nickcarrier.com/bestyourretreat. Okay, let's dive into this thing. The first 2 things I'm going to segment out is the 4 buckets, I should say, of cardiovascular fitness, and the others is the 3 goals of cardiovascular fitness. The 4 types: number 1, movement; number 2, zone 2; number 3, high intensity; and number 4 is speed. Those are the 4 different buckets of cardio that I'm going to be talking about today. And then there's 3 different goals of cardio, like why do you actually do cardio in the first place? Number 1, it could be to burn calories / lose fat. Number 2 is to improve your heart health. And number 3 is to improve your performance. And so we have to understand those 2 different pieces of context, the types of cardio and the goals that cardio are for, before really being able to dive deeper into this topic. Okay, so let's talk about each bucket of cardiovascular fitness. The first one is movement. This could be just going outside for a walk. This could be walking on a treadmill. This could be walking on low incline. This would be something where your heart rate is probably about 60% or less of your max heart rate. Now, why would you do this? Why do you go on a walk? What are the actual benefits of going on a walk? Primarily, it's just going to be a matter of burning a few more calories throughout your day. This is the part of your total daily energy expenditure that's titled NEAT, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, the part that is not specifically a planned workout or anything like that. This is just doing a walk to do a walk. It might be with a weighted vest on to get maybe a little bit more caloric burn that we'll dive into in just a second. But primarily the only thing you're going to get out of this is to burn a few more calories, and therefore potentially leading to a little bit more fat loss if you have a goal of fat loss or weight loss. And so I say that's the only benefit. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. I love going on walks. I think walks are great. From a physiological perspective or a fitness goal perspective, that's the benefits that you're going to get. But it's also a great mental health tool. It might be a great way to get sunlight. It might be a great way to just get the juices flowing and wake you up and provide you with a little bit more energy, right? Like, I think those are sometimes the bigger benefits that some of my clients note when they start going on walks more, is like the mental benefits that they have, the energetic benefits that they have over than ability to maybe lose a little bit more body fat than you would otherwise be able to do. However, that is the first bucket. It's movement. Its heart rate is low. Your only benefit is basically burning more calories. You're not really doing much to improve your performance. You're not really doing much to improve your actual heart health. And then a lot of people ask me, what does a weighted vest do? That's huge right now. Buying a weighted vest, going on a walk with a weighted vest. And that's great. I'm not against a weighted vest. However, if you think that simply adding a weighted vest to your walks outside, if you think that's going to make all the difference in the world, then you're sadly mistaken. Now, if you walk with an extra 20 pounds on your back, are you going to burn a few more calories than if you didn't walk with 20 pounds on your back? Yeah. Will the difference in the amount of calories that you burn make all the difference in the world? Absolutely not. Now, if buying a weighted vest gets you to go outside and do more walks, then that could be definitely an added benefit. If you have it and so you feel like now I got to use it, that 100% could be an added benefit. But if you're comparing apples to apples, meaning you're comparing, I'm going to go on a walk for 45 minutes 3 times a week without a weighted vest versus I'm going to go on a walk 3 times a week for 45 minutes with a weighted vest, are you going to see much difference? The answer is no. You're going to burn a few more calories. You're going to train your legs a little bit more, but it's not a ton, and it's not going to make all the difference in the world. So get the weighted vest. Let it motivate you to get out there and do stuff. But if you just use them on flat road walks, it's not going to make all the difference in the world. It might be the thing, however, to get your heart rate a little bit more elevated if you're doing an incline walk or a hike or what some people call a ruck. And so that's where we kind of transition into the next part, zone 2. And we're going to kind of combine zone 2 and VO2 max a little bit here. Then I'm going to dive into performance, and then I'm going to go much more in depth into zone 2 and VO2 max. So there's this triangle/pyramid analogy when it comes to cardiovascular fitness, because there's 2 different energy systems inside of the body that produce energy. And there's the aerobic system that uses oxygen, and there's the anaerobic system that stands for without, or that doesn't stand for, that means without oxygen. And so if you think about a triangle, there's a base of a triangle, the bottom of a triangle. That represents your aerobic engine. That represents how long you can go at a lower intensity. The peak, the top of the triangle, represents your VO2 max, represents how high of intensity you can go for how long. And so ideally, when we're thinking about our cardiovascular fitness, we want as robust of a triangle as possible. We want a super wide base and a super high peak. We don't want a narrow base and then a tall little peak. We don't want a super wide base and then just a flat peak. We want wide base, tall peak. That is optimal from a cardiovascular health perspective. So again, to simplify it, think zone 2 is how long can you go? VO2 max is more like when you go really hard, how long can you go really hard? And Dr. Peter Attia talks a lot about how VO2 max is actually one of the best, if not the best, predictor of longevity of any kind of biomarker that we have out there. We'll dive deeper into those 2 here in just a little bit. The last bucket of cardiovascular fitness is performance. And in particular, think speed. Think how fast can you run? Training in this particular type of way, doing this particular type of cardio is applicable obviously for athletes who are trying to get faster and trying to improve their performance, but it's also applicable to people who are just trying to maintain their fast twitch muscle fibers. That would be a concept or a topic for a different episode, but basically as we get older, we're more quickly and more likely to lose our fast twitch muscle fibers, the ones that are responsible for heavy lifting and explosive movements, than we are slow twitch muscle fibers. And so we want to try to hold on to those as long as we can. So training speed is important for that. And just like, look, as you get older, I'm sure you still want to be able to perform to a certain extent. I mean, I'm only 30, so I'm not very old, but I still want to be able to be fast. Like if I want to go play a sport, if I want to go play basketball, play football, play whatever sport you might say, I want to be fast. And so I want to be able to maintain a certain level of performance of speed as well. And so speed is, I'm working for a very short period of time, really bringing a lot of effort, but then I really let my body recover plenty so that my next effort can be super high intensity once again. So those are the 4 buckets: movement, zone 2, VO2 max, and speed. When we're talking about the 3 goals, movement helps to really burn calories and lose maybe a little bit of fat, but it's not really going to do much for heart health or improving any kind of performance. Your zone 2 and your VO2 max buckets, those are really going to help you with all 3. I like to think about them specifically in terms of this conversation as really building your heart health and building your engine and improving your longevity. But of course, doing zone 2 and VO2 max are going to be things that burn calories and help you lose body fat and also help you improve your performance or your sports performance as well. But in terms of this particular episode, I like to think about them as really helping to build your heart health. And then focusing on speed is going to be the thing that really helps you improve your performance. Of course, it's going to burn some calories and help you lose a little bit of fat. Any activity is going to get you to do that, but it's not primarily for that, because you want to make sure you take plenty of rest time, because you're focused on optimal execution of the reps, if you will. And then it's going to help improve your heart health a little bit, but not too much, because you don't really have too much sustained level of effort because they're short, explosive bouts. But speed work will help you improve your performance. So I hope that helps to contextualize the different types of cardio and why you would do each type of cardio. Now, let's spend some time on zone 2 and VO2 max. These are really important, like I said, for all 3 of the buckets, but we're going to talk in particular about cardiovascular health today. So when we're talking about zone 2, I want you to think, I'm going to start wherever I can. There's going to be some of you out there who have run half marathons and run marathons, and you know exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to zone 2. There's going to be some of you guys who haven't run in a long time, and maybe you're currently doing a couch to 5K program, or maybe you're thinking about doing a couch to 5K program, or maybe you just finished one, and so you're a little bit more on the beginner type stage of this. Start wherever you can, and then ramp up. Maybe you start with going outside for a nice, easy 20-minute jog, and you do that 2 times a week, and then the next week you do the same thing, and the next week you make it 22 minutes both times, so on and so forth. So you would start by slowly ramping up the volume of total duration that you do with each day of cardiovascular training, if you will. Now, zone 2, and preparing for this episode, I didn't know exactly how deep into the weeds I wanted to get, so we're going to get somewhat deeper than you might have done in the past, but I'm not going to get too sciencey with it. Zone 2 is traditionally talked about as a percentage of your max heart rate. Number 1. It's sometimes talked about 180 minus your age. So 180 beats per minute minus your age. If you're 30 years old, that means 150 beats per minute would be your average heart rate on a steady state bout of cardio. So percentage of your max heart rate, 180 minus your age. Or the third would be a conversational type pace, meaning like your rate of perceived exertion. Like how hard do you feel like you're working right now, which should be somewhat of a mild level of intensity when we're talking about zone 2. But what you're actually mean by zone 2, if we're actually getting into the weeds and what we really mean when it comes to internally, how do you know when you're in a zone 2? Peter Attia dives deep into this, and I watched a video when he broke this down very eloquently. Zone 2, we're looking to harness what's called mitochondrial efficiency. The mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cells, and we want them to become more efficient in creating energy. Now, when we're talking about zone 2, we want to do that by pushing what's called the oxidative phosphorylation right to its limit before you trip into what's called glycolysis. Now, before you move on to a different podcast or listening to something else, the simple way I want you to think about this that you've maybe heard before is when do you go from primarily burning fat to primarily burning carbs during your cardio session? That's what we mean by pushing oxidative phosphorylation, aka burning fat, to its limit before you trip into glycolysis, aka burning carbs. We want to be right at that limit before transitioning into glycolysis, aka carbs, as our dominant energy source. Now, these are the two different energy systems that we have, but if we want to train the mitochondrial efficiency, then we want to stay in burning more fat, or the oxidative phosphorylation, and we don't want to burn as much carbs. We want to try to stay away from the glycolysis side of the energy system equation, if you will. I also dive a lot deeper into this in a recent episode that I did with Griffin Moore. And so if you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to have that video pop up here, and you can click on Save Next or open in a new tab and listen to that next. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, I'll have the episode with Griffin Moore linked down in the show notes as well. But we really do a good deep dive into this, and we talk about, is high-intensity cardio better or is low-intensity cardio better? And so if you want to listen to that and just specifically the cardiovascular portion of our conversation, then you can start that episode at about 26 minutes in. I went and looked it up for you so that you could get right to the meat and potatoes of the cardiovascular conversation. So 26 minutes into the Griffin Moore episode, we dive into this. But what I essentially want you to understand and what I want you to leave with, I don't need you to memorize what oxidative phosphorylation and glycolysis means. I just want you to understand that when you're doing cardio, if you're training really hard all the time, then you're going to be in that glycolysis energy system, which is fine, and you're still getting bang for your buck. You're still burning calories, and you're still improving your VO2 max, if you will. Optimally, probably not. We'll talk about that in a second. However, you're not getting the most bang for your buck in terms of training your mitochondrial efficiency. You're not getting as much bang for your buck in terms of building a wide base of your triangle in terms of your cardiovascular health. And so when we do zone 2, we want to make sure that we don't do it too hard at too high of intensity. We want to stay at a certain level of intensity where we're still burning more fat than carbs as our energy source. Now, that's zone 2. Let's dive into VO2 max. This is where we're training at a high intensity. We're training to elevate the peak of our triangle. This is where we're training in more of like a zone 5, if you will, on a 5-zone heart rate model, if you will. Dr. Peter Attia, and in the episode that I had with Griffin Moore, we talked about just like one specific protocol that you could use in terms of specifically trying to implement improving your VO2 max. And this method that he calls is called the Norwegian 4x4 method, which means you have a 4-minute interval where you run kind of as fast as you can, but sustain it for 4 minutes. Then you rest for 4 minutes, and you do it 4 times. So it's basically 16 minutes total, or 12 minutes if you don't count the last rest, if you will. But 4 minutes where you're going hard, but you don't want to go a sprint right out of the gates, because you wouldn't be able to hold that sprint for 4 minutes, and you certainly wouldn't be able to hold it for 4 rounds. So you want to find one speed that you can hold on to for 4 minutes. By the end of the 4 minutes, it's really, really hard, but you can do it. Then you rest for 4 minutes, and you can do that same thing again for a total of 4 rounds. Now, if you don't want to do this 4x4 method, the other way that you can think about it is a 1-to-1 work to rest ratio. Meaning if you're working for 4 minutes, you rest for 4 minutes. Or if you work for 30 seconds, you rest for 30 seconds. And so you can start wherever you are and scale up. So maybe it's 20 seconds on, 20 seconds off, and you do 6 rounds of it. And then at some point, you do 7 rounds or 8 rounds. And then at some point, you go to 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off. And so a 1-to-1 work to rest ratio is a great way to improve your VO2 max. Last specific I want to get into today is the generally discussed, easy to remember framework in terms of how you should implement doing zone 2 work versus kind of VO2 max work is the 80-20 rule. 80% of the minutes of cardiovascular activity that you do should be spent doing zone 2 work, and 20% of the minutes that you spend doing cardiovascular work should be higher intensity work, or VO2 max work, if you will. And so if you do 150 minutes of cardiovascular activity, I should have done this before I hopped on the episode, but I can do it right here. If you do 150 minutes of cardiovascular activity on a weekly basis, which is the recommended amount by the World Health Organization, that would be 30 minutes of high-intensity cardio per week and I could have been able to do that math right off the top of my head. You got to be better than that, Nick. Come on, buddy. Anyways, 30 minutes of high-intensity cardio per week and 120 minutes of that zone 2 cardio per week. Now, I'm pretty sure when you're talking about the World Health Organization's recommendation. Now, I'm not 100% sure. I should have fact-checked this before as well. But I'm pretty sure that doesn't mean like just walking. That actually means elevated heart rate above a certain percentage of your max heart rate is what I would assume the World Health Organization would throw out there. But I hope this provides you with some context. Remember, there's 4 different kind of buckets of cardiovascular fitness. These 4 buckets aren't something that is necessarily official terminology. This is just my terminology. This is just something that I've kind of come up with to help people understand the different types of cardio activity and why you would want to do each particular one. So the first one is just movement. Then there's zone 2. Then there's high intensity or VO2 max work. And then there's speed. And you would do these to burn calories / lose fat, to build your heart health and improve your performance. Now, the last thing that I want to say is, how do you actually apply this? First is get clear on which of those 3 goals is yours right now. Like, are you looking to just have something to help you burn a few more calories or something to help you lose fat? Or are you looking to actually specifically optimize for heart health? Or are you someone who wants to improve your performance and improve your speed? Like, get clear on what your goal is in terms of the cardiovascular fitness that you put in. That's number 1. Number 2 is, practically speaking, determine the amount of time that you are willing and able to commit to cardiovascular activity as you go throughout the week. Now, the World Health Organization says 150 minutes. But look, if you're not able to do 150 minutes, then so be it. Can you do 30 minutes, 45, 60, 90? How many minutes are you willing and able to commit to cardiovascular activity? Once you come up with that amount, then kind of like divide that up into days. Is it 2 30-minute days? Is it 2 45-minute days? Is it 3 20-minute days? What does that look like for you? Now, one thing that I will say is, if you're doing a cardiovascular workout that is less than 30 minutes, I would recommend that it's either, number 1, high intensity, or number 2, it's just movement for the sake of movement. Because if you're trying to do a zone 2 workout that's just 20 minutes, of course it's going to burn some calories, but it's not going to do as much to improve your mitochondrial efficiency. Because one of the things that Dr. Peter Attia talks about is, when you're doing zone 2, it needs to be a little bit more of a longer duration to get the most bang for your buck. Now, if you need to build up to the longer duration, so what? Build up to the longer duration. But my recommendation is, if your cardiovascular activity is going to be less than 30 minutes, to either make it high intensity or just do it for the sake of movement rather than a zone 2 workout. But okay, get clear on the goal. How much time are you willing to put in? Divide that up into how many days. Then come up with the goal for each day of cardiovascular activity. Maybe you do one day that's a zone 2 day, and you do a 45-minute jog. Maybe you do one day that's a VO2 max day, where you do 20 minutes of work, and you maybe warm up a little bit, and then you do 10 rounds of 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off on the assault bike. And then you do recovery and breathing to recover. And maybe you have 2 movement days where you go on a couple of 30-minute walks. And so I would say assign each bout of cardiovascular activity or each cardio workout to what the goal is that you're trying to get out of that particular workout, and then plan accordingly. I hope this episode helps you. Give me some feedback as to what you thought about it, if it gives you more clarity around the different types of cardio and why you would do the different types of cardio. And again, if you want to dive deeper into this topic, then watch the video that I did called The Science of Longevity with Griffin Moore. And if you want to dive right into the cardiovascular part of our conversation, then go to 26 minutes into the episode. If you're watching on YouTube, here's the video. If you're listening on the Apple Podcast app or on Spotify, then we'll make sure it's in the show notes and description down below. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. I hope it allows you to be more empowered and more confident as to what kind of cardio you should do for how long to get the specific benefits that you want to get. Share it with a friend or family member. I hope today helps you improve your ability in your health and fitness, and I hope today ultimately helps you get closer and closer to your best you.